Chapter 3 of the timeline will cover the time that Mario and Luigi spent living in their house in New Donk City, and many of the jobs that they had during this time. It also highlights a very significant event for the city, Mario's confrontation with Donkey Kong Sr. The year is 1981, and Mario and Luigi are both 40 years old. After Mario and Luigi became adults, they moved out of their parents' place. They at some point settled down in New Donk City to look for work. In Super Mario Odyssey, it's confirmed that New Donk City is the original location of the events of Donkey Kong Arcade. The red girders spread around the city are identical to the ones in Donkey Kong Arcade, and the city even throws a festival in remembrance of when Mario fought Donkey Kong Sr. and rescued Pauline. It's likely that Mario and Luigi are living together, but again it's not specified. Because Donkey Kong takes place in New Donk City, it's assumed that the location of the games from this part of the timeline all take place in or near New Donk City as well, because Mario and Luigi live here. At some point after Donkey Kong Sr. grows up, he meets his lover for life, Wrinkly Kong, who accepts his hand in marriage. This is confirmed in Donkey Kong Country 2, as Wrinkly Kong refers to Cranky Kong as her husband. It's likely that Wrinkly Kong went by a different name during this time. Donkey Kong Sr. is later referred to by the other Kongs as Cranky Kong, due to his cranky nature. The same could easily be assumed about Wrinkly Kong, due to her wrinkly nature, although what her real name would be is unknown. Donkey Kong Sr. and Wrinkly Kong live together in a large tower in Rocky Valley. The manual for Donkey Kong for the Game Boy states that this is Donkey Kong Sr.'s home, so it can be assumed that this is where they live during this time. For whatever reason, Donkey Kong Sr. visits New Donk City around June. On June 9th of 1981, Donkey Kong takes place. The beautiful maiden Pauline screams for her life as she is dragged up a labyrinth of structural beams by the ominous Donkey Kong Sr. Mario throws fate to the wind, risks life and limb or worse as he desperately climbs the mighty fortress of steel to save the lovely lady from the evil Mr. Kong. There are many ports of this game such as the NES port, Game & Watch port, and Game Boy Advanced port. They are all simply retellings of the same story. Mario dodges all manner of obstacles and eventually sends the Great Ape plummeting, while securing the hand of the fair lady. A mutual romantic interest is sparked between the two and they become close friends. This single event made Mario, Pauline, and Donkey Kong Sr. famous in the city. It could be because the humans of New Donk are not used to seeing the acrobatics and bravery of what took place. It's unknown what prompted Donkey Kong Sr. to kidnap Pauline. Donkey Kong is the first game in the timeline to take place on its real-life release date. As stated previously, every game in the timeline is assumed to take place on its real-life release date, unless there is information that suggests otherwise. In mid-1981, Maya Nolette is born. Early in 1982, Donkey Kong Sr. and Wrinkly Kong give birth to Donkey Kong Jr. This is assumed due to his young appearance in his titular game, Donkey Kong Jr., which takes place in August of 1982. In mid-1982, Moby Jones and Edward Wachowski are both born as well. On August 31st of 1982, Donkey Kong Jr. takes place, as well as Donkey Kong 2 for the Game & Watch, which is a retelling of the same story. Mario captures Donkey Kong Sr. and locks him up to prevent him from causing any more havoc. Donkey Kong Jr. chases after Mario. He steals the keys and frees his father, and they are able to escape. It's around this time that Donkey Kong Sr. and Wrinkly Kong give birth to their second son, Donkey Kong Jr. 2. In Donkey Kong Jr. Math, when playing with a second player, a pink-colored Kong participates in the game. According to the instruction manual, his name is Donkey Kong Jr. 2. It's assumed that he was born after the events of Donkey Kong Jr. because it would stand to reason that he would have been there alongside Jr. to help rescue their father if he was already born. From this point in the timeline onward, many of the games in the timeline take place on their real-life release dates. If this is the case, the date will be displayed but most likely not mentioned to avoid redundancy. Up next is Mario Bros. For the Game & Watch. Mario and Luigi work in a drink factory packing and shipping bottles. It's unknown what the bros had been doing in the city at this point, but it's likely they've been doing many different blue-collar type jobs, as that will be the pattern going forward. A month later, Mario quits his job at the drink factory and applies to a cement factory and gets a job. This is depicted in Mario's Cement Factory for the Game & Watch. Again, this takes place in New Donk City most likely. Mario and Luigi switch jobs a lot during this time. It could be because they have a hard time keeping work, or maybe they just get complacent. Sometime in mid-1983, Marisol Diaz Delgado was born. Up next is Mario Bros. The game has been re-released many times. This list of ports is as follows. the NES port, and Super Mario Advanced 1, 2, 3, and 4 ports. Mario and Luigi work as plumbers in the sewers of New Donk City. They get rid of various monsters and pests infesting the place. Next is Donkey Kong 3. Donkey Kong breaks into Stanley's greenhouse in order to eat his flowers. Stanley uses a sprayer to kill the bugs infesting his greenhouse and chase Donkey Kong away. This is Stanley the Bugman's only appearance. Mario in the meantime has joined a boot camp in Mario's Bombs Away. He is trying to pass bombs back and forth to his fellow soldiers, while enemy soldiers are trying to stop him. This could be interpreted as Mario fighting in a war, but it's more likely to be a boot camp of sorts. After Donkey Kong's defeat at the hands of Stanley, he returns to his parental responsibility of educating his sons, Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong Jr. 2, in Donkey Kong Jr. Math. They practice addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. For whatever reason, Donkey Kong Jr. 2 will not be seen after this time. The reasoning for his disappearance is unknown. During 1984, Saberman is fleeing the Saberwolf while on the Isle o' Hags, but strays too close to the home of Chilly Willy the Ice Dragon, and is frozen solid by his ice breath. In Banjo-Tooie, Banjo and Kazooie find Saberman, who is frozen solid. After freeing him, he states that he's been frozen in there since 1984. This is another example of the inhabitants of the Mushroom World using the Gregorian calendar. Mario at this time decides to be a chair umpire in tennis for the NES and Game Boy. Mario's love for tennis most likely started here. Mario decides he needs a break and goes golfing in the NES title Golf. Golf is another one of Mario's passions. In early 1985, Viggo Rolig is born. Mario is trying everything and anything at this point to make a decent living. Mario decides to turn to an old rival of his with a business proposition. The relationship between Mario and Donkey Kong Sr. is complicated at this point. They aren't exactly fond of each other, but they decide to start a circus titled Donkey Kong Circus. Mario shows off Donkey Kong, who balances on a barrel and juggles pineapples. This is depicted in Donkey Kong Circus. In November of 1984, Kaori Nishidaka and Allegra Savages are both born. After being in a circus together, Mario and Donkey Kong decide to set their differences aside and play hockey. This is shown in Donkey Kong Hockey. In early 1985, Mac Frazier is born. In mid-1985, Nate Logan's little brother, Tyson Logan, is born. Mario and Luigi work on a demolition site and wrecking crew. Foreman Spike serves as their boss, and they engage in some friendly competition to demolish what they can. He also incentivizes them with bonus pay if they can destroy more things than he can. Donkey Kong for the Game Boy takes place around June of 1985. It takes place around this time because Donkey Kong Jr. has not matured yet, and Mario still presumably lives in New Donk City. Despite being in a circus together and playing hockey together, they haven't really cemented a friendship yet. While Mario is performing acrobatics, Donkey Kong kidnaps Pauline and takes her to the top of a construction site. He easily climbs to the top with his newly learned acrobatics. After his defeat, Donkey Kong grabs Pauline and runs to Big Ape City, and Mario pursues. Donkey Kong gets help from his son. Eventually, Mario chases them to their home in Rocky Valley. He defeats them and the four of them make up. It's at this point that Mario and Donkey Kong form a truly positive relationship. Soon after the events of the game, Mario will leave New Donk City and move to his castle in Mario Land. Despite the long distance, he and Pauline keep in touch.